Hey, Coach, it's Chris Russell. Sorry, I didn't realize I was first. Just in terms of the team's temperature coming off of a win, obviously the resiliency that you guys showed, and now with a couple of days of practice, do you like what you're seeing in terms of how they bounce back? Maybe not too high, a lot of work, a lot of things to correct, or are you not seeing what you want to see?
Well, we're seeing what we want to see, but again, you always have your expectations are higher. So, I think they're where they need to be right now. The next couple of days obviously are important in terms of preparation and finalizing our preparation for this team. So we'll see how it goes tomorrow. Looking forward to it because tomorrow's pretty much situational football, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Hey, Ron, we got Scott Turner's thoughts on Antonio Gibson's debut yesterday. I'm not sure if we heard from you yet on him. So what did you make of what he did in week one and getting his feet wet in the NFL?
I thought he did well. Again, he's a young guy, and you want to kind of introduce some guys gradually, for the things that we're asking of him. I thought he handled those pretty well. And, in talking with Scotty, I know there's some more opportunities that we can create for Antonio. He's a heck of a football player, and he showed you a couple of things that, when the ball in his hands, he can be dynamic. So, we most certainly are looking for opportunities for not just him, but all our guys.
Hey, Ron, there's a belief among some coaches and GMs that after coordinators, offensive line coach is the most important coach or a head coach could make because they have 5 players in the field, there's chemistry, and things are important there. I just wonder if you agree with that.
Well, I think they're important. I think all the coaches are important, and really it's really the value that you put on each guy. I've been very fortunate for the last 10 seasons. I've had John Matsko with me, and with Coach Matsko, his assistant has always been a former player, and I think those guys have done a great job. I think it's a heck of a combination. I think after your coordinators, offensive line coach could probably be your quarterback coach could be as well as your defensive line coach too. So, it's it's right up there, definitely.
And what can a coach like John Matsko, who's been around the game for such a long time, do for a first-time offensive coordinator like Scott?
Well, first of all, I think what happens for Scott is, and Scott was on my original staff that included Coach Matsko. First of all, so there's familiarity, but just the fact that you have a guy with that kind of knowledge and that kind of experience, at your side, it helps. And one of the things that Coach Matsko can do is give him another opinion, another way to look at things. The other guy that's very valuable for this, as far as our staff's concerned, is Pete Haynard. A longtime tight end coach in this league who's done some great things, and he's got the same kind of background that Coach Matsko has. 30 years in the league and doing a great job. So. I think it's a good staff. I like the guys that we have. Running back, we got Randy, who's former running back, who played in the league. So, it's a very diverse group. It's a very interesting group. Guys that have come from all over. Guys that have been on championship teams. Jim Hosser's won a Super Bowl. So to have guys at every position, that has a very good background. Kenny Zampese comes in and he's worked with young quarterbacks before. So I think it's a good staff of guys.
Thank you.
Hey, Ron, I'm curious with the back 7. There was a lot of talk about the defensive line, pass rush with good reason. How important were they in that, going up against a mobile quarterback like Carson and then looking ahead to Sunday when you have that back group against a mobile quarterback like Kyler? We know what the pass rush, but what about that back 7 against that sort of situation?
Well, the back 7's got to play smart football. That's for doggone sure, first and foremost. You've got to play disciplined and smart football against a guy like Kyler because he's going to extend plays, and you've got to be able to, be where you're supposed to be, focus in on what your assignment is, and go from there. If a guy starts getting antsy, starts getting nosy, starts looking in the backfield, he can give up plays. He can lose sight of where he's supposed to, who he's supposed to be covering. One thing they can't do either is you got to be strict in your zones. If you're playing zone coverage, you got to get to your landmarks. You got to connect to who you're supposed to connect to, and so it's very vital that the back 7 understands that because, again, if he breaks contain or he extends a play, you have to be disciplined enough to force him, to either throw the ball away or run on his own.
And then when in those situations, like
I lost you. Hello.
Sorry about that. I'm back. how did you feel like they did in those situations last week? Were you pleased with that? And,
Very much so. The only one that got away from us was the one on Ronald. When he let Jackson get behind him. I mean, and he knows better than that, because the very next time they tried to go deep again, he was there to almost make the interception. So, again, that just showed you that it is about playing discipline. It is about playing where you're supposed to in your techniques, and that really, to me, last week I thought was the only thing that really kind of disappointed me. I will say the first quarter and a half we weren't connecting the way we needed to underneath in terms of getting to our landmarks, carrying receivers from one zone to the other, that type of stuff. And we lost leverage a couple times when we were in man. But once we settled in, once the pass rush got going, once the coverage really kind of set themselves, you could see the success we were having.
Thank you.
Hey, Ron, when you were looking back at the film, there were those, I believe it was 2 consecutive plays right before the half where the Eagles were trying to take those 2 big shots to Rager and to Deshaun Jackson. I guess I'm kind of curious, before you guys face Larry Fitzgerald and DeAndre Hopkins, how do you plan to address those types of situations? Carson Wentz missed them, but how do you address not letting guys get behind you, especially when you have the opponents you have this week?
Well, that's all part of the game. Sometimes that's going to happen. They're going to take shots. What you got to do is you got to be disciplined, and you can't sit on those routes and anticipate some sort of break off of it. When you start settling your feet, expect them to run a dig or to run a stop or run a comeback, that gets you in trouble. And so really, it's really about the discipline of it. So, again, what we have to do is just play disciplined football and do our assignments.
And then the last thing was Sam Mills III. He, from 2012, your defensive line had the most sacks in the league. I guess what is attributed to that success? The team just had 8, as you know, but what has been the secret to the success there?
Well, I think part of it has been coaching, but I also think part of it is having the right kind of personnel. I mean, I've been very fortunate to have guys that can be very productive, and go back and look at the players that we had in Carolina. With Greg Hardy and Charles Johnson and Mario Addison, K'Wan Short, Star Lutuleti, Dwan Edwards. These are guys. These are guys that get after the quarterback. Well, here we're fortunate. We have guys that get after the quarterback, but you've also got to have somebody that's going to work with them, teach them, get them to understand, and then get them to go out and do their jobs. And you also have to have a play caller that's willing to make the plays. I was fortunate in my time, that I had Sean McDermott, I had Steve Wilkes, I had Eric Washington as my coordinators. So. Here I got Jack, and Jack did a great job last Sunday. So, I think we've got the makings, we've got the formula for what we need. And then also, let's don't forget the coverage. We had some cover guys. We had some years where we were up there in the top 2 or 3 in takeaways. So that's also a big part of it as well.
Thank you, Ron.
Ron, with no preseason and just a generally strange offseason, how close is the offense to becoming what you and Scott Turner envisioned? Are you guys able to implement everything at this point, or are there still things that
I think there's a ways to go for us offensively. Defense it's a little easier to plug and play. Offensively, there's a lot of little nuances that we've got to improve on, and a lot of little details we've got to get better with. And as we grow and become better as a team, I think we can really go out and make some things happen. But right now, I think we're just starting to scratch the surface of it. Scotty's got a pretty creative mind, as do a lot of the offensive coaches. So it's going to take a while before we get to where we want to be. It's not one of those things where as you start game planning, you start adding and adding and adding. Now when you start game planning, you're going to really just put what you believe in the game plan is going to help you win the game. So I think we've got a ways to go, and you probably really won't see or get a feel for it until really next season.
Mm-hmm. And as far as Logan Thomas, how do you feel he's continuing to progress? Is it as you expected?
I think he's progressing along the lines of what we had hoped for him to do. Again, let's not forget this is a guy that played quarterback for a long time and then started playing tight end, and really didn't play a lot of football in terms of tight end until last season in Detroit. So we saw something that told us here's a guy that's got an opportunity, that's got a good skill set, and Pete Haynard, our tight end coach, as I said earlier, if you look at the guys that he's trained and developed, starting with Vernon Davis and Delaney Walker from Tennessee, and Greg Olson and Gary Barnage. He's developed a lot of good quality football players, and he feels pretty good about what Logan Thomas has brought to the table so far.
Hey, we can move on to Matt Parrish.
Hey, Ron.
Cam Newton wasn't the first mobile quarterback, but in the 10 years we've seen a lot of players just kind of use those elements. How do you think coaches kind of have adapted to that, and you maybe more have embraced more like techniques with running or anything like that?
I think they are embracing more of it. The thing that's kind of difficult for a defensive coach is, in today's game, you got these mobile quarterbacks, these guys that are going around running and all that stuff, and you're really not allowed to hit them like you used to be able to hit them. And so because of that, you see, I think, a few more coaches and a few more quarterbacks taking liberties at the fact that, you can't really crush them. So you're going to see more and more, I think, of this because, we're trying to protect the quarterbacks and, put a little bit more pressure on the defensive guys. I think that a lot of people are embracing the quarterback mobility, and you're starting to see it. And when you got players like Kyler Murray and and Cam Newton, and Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, I mean, the game has changed. It's changed tremendously. I mean, I'm not sure if you'll ever really truly see the true drop back passer coming out like they used to. I think the guy's going to have an element of mobility in his game to really help him. And I think because of that too, it's affecting the rest of the game. It's affecting a lot of the other positions. These spread offenses, these zone read offenses, these RPO offenses. You have to now train offensive linemen completely different too as well, and it takes a while to get them to learn how to pass protect. For a true drop back quarterback.
Yeah, are mobile quarterbacks, so to say, like better passers than they used to be too? It seems like a guy like Mahomes, his arm is incredible and like a pretty good passer.
Yeah, I when you talk about mobile quarterback, we're not talking about guys running and throwing the ball on the run for the most part. Guys that keep plays alive with their mobility is really what you're seeing these guys do. When I talk about a mobile quarterback, I'm talking about a guy that's going to pull the ball and run. Mobile quarterbacks, you don't see a lot of bootleg guys, a lot of sprint action guys. What you're seeing is guys that use their mobility to move around in the pocket, buy time for those routes, and then set their feet and throw the ball downfield. That's a little bit different than the true mobile quarterbacks back in the day.
Hey guys, we only got time for 3 more.
Hey Ron, now that you've been around Terry McLaurin for a bit, just curious your thoughts on him as the player and just also the way he conducts himself day to day.
He's a young pro. I mean, there's everything about him that says pro. I mean, he's a solid football player. He's a solid young man. He does the things that you expect a guy like him to do. He shows up on time, ready to go to work, and he handles himself above and beyond. So here's a young man that hopefully stays healthy and can have a very long career and a very productive one for us here.
I'll go real quick. Not sure who's still left. It's JP. Hey, Coach. Sadiq Charles is off the injury report. I'm wondering kind of where he's at and if he's going to start competing at that left tackle spot, or are you happy with Jerron there?
Well, he is off, and he is practicing, and he is competing.
Hi, Coach.
Right,
JP, you always ask the difficult question. So I just like to give you the easy answer.
He's a difficult person.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, Coach.
Hey, Coach. We know by now about what Dwayne said to the guys at halftime when you were getting your IV. But what other ways that maybe we don't see, whether that's behind the scenes at practice, do you see Dwayne taking on more of a leadership role and taking his captaincy seriously?
When something happens and then we finish that drill, he'll go right over to whether it was a receiver or a running back or a tight end and, try to, hey, this, that about your route, or, hey, I could have thrown it over here. You know what I'm saying? He's taking responsibility, but he's also going over to find out exactly what happened and then get it worked out. You see him pulling guys aside and doing those things, and that's part of it, I think, in terms of his growth. And I think that's important, that he's willing to show the guys that, hey, he's going to take responsibility. He's going to try and get things corrected. He's going to try and make things work.
Last one, guys.
Hey, Ron, Scott Abraham, ABC7. Good to see you. I feel like some fans out there already want to anoint Chase Young into the Hall of Fame. Had a great debut. Everybody's excited. do you pull Chase aside and maybe have a private conversation with him, saying to kind of like, you've done nothing yet, just stay even keel? Do you even say anything to him to kind of ignore the noise in a sense?
Well, probably the biggest thing, Scott, that we've talked about really is just staying focused, and that, hey, more so than anything else is you also talk about what his potential is. And because I don't want to take away the dream, you do want him thinking about playing like a Hall of Famer. You do want him thinking, hey, I can be the best. That's the kind of stuff that you want to continue to encourage. But you also at the same time, and I agree with what you said, Scott, is try to get him, hey, let's ignore the noise. Let's just go out and take care of our business and hey, and let our work show.
All right.